Well, I'm back for another book review, and this is going to be of interest to those of you curious about magic theory and hypnosis and that sort of thing. This book is more nostalgia for me here, just with my time working at a magic store back in the late 80s, early 90s. This book, I remember when we got this in, and I didn't buy it till years later, but I was, a poor high school student that didn't have money for expensive pickpocketing books. But this is Jim Revell's Theatrical Pickpocketing written with Paul Butler, a magical publication. Of course, we got a picture of Jim Revell right there posing with things he has purloined. This is exactly what it says. It's a book about theatrical pickpocketing, about stage pickpocket magic. And believe it or not, this is relevant to the other material on this channel. This is more than just a trip down memory lane. But anyway, but quick history about this as far as my history goes. We had this book, we brought this in because I think a local magician had asked us to bring it in, and I think they might have ordered a couple of copies of it and to have in the store. And then me and one of my coworkers, we'd sit there and read it in our spare time. And it's all kinds of instructions about how to steal wallets. And the one I'm going to talk about here is the watch steal, because that was the only one I learned with any proficiency in this. But basically, theatrical pickpocketing is the entertaining thievery, so to speak, of going and inviting a spectator up on stage and through some humorous byplay, stealing wallets and other seemingly impossible things to take, like their necktie or suspenders or other personal effects, and but all presented humorously. And unbeknownst to me at the time, this was really kind of my first venture into the world of hypnosis, because I learned the watch steal out of this book. There's a couple of different watch steals, but a watch steal is, if you've never seen this done, it's basically a magician stealing a wristwatch off of a spectator. In the course of doing a magic trick, they steal their watch and then present it to them later in the routine. And it's one of those things that even when you witness it firsthand, you don't, even as a spectator watching it happen to someone else, it's really hard to see it happen if it's done properly. And when I learned this technique and when I learned the trick, it's, like I said, this is kind of my first dose of hypnosis, but not realizing it. And like I said, I'll explain the relevance to this. It's all about focusing attention. And that was one thing I wish I had understood better at the time. But at the time, I was like 17, 18 years old, and I was looking at more as a cool trick to do as part of my regular routine. But I never could get past that. And I think if I had understood the hypnotic aspect of this, which this author doesn't touch on either, I think I would have been able to incorporate this more into my act. But it requires you touching the audience participant a lot, grabbing their wrist and moving their hand different places. And over the course of doing that, you're gradually getting their watch away from them until the final move. And the reason it works is through hypnosis. You're directing their attention, and the surrounding audience, you're directing their attention is so focused on the other thing that's happening, and both through your wording and through your physical presence, the way you're directing their attention, that they don't notice this other very obvious thing that's happening, which is, of course, their watch being stolen. And really, that goes for a lot of other elements of theatrical pickpocketing, because it's all about focusing attention on where it shouldn't be while something else is happening. So, and really that's the core of misdirection, is this hypnotic level of focus on fixating someone on something that is seemingly very important, but actually is distracting them from something else that is of much greater importance. And I used to do this as more of an impromptu magic trick for friends and family that were standing around and wait for that right moment to execute that watch steal. But I never got it. I never felt confident enough to do it in live performance, so to speak, in a regular standard performance setting. And a lot of that was because I didn't understand back then the mechanics of what was happening to people mentally. Because every time I would do that trick, I would think, they have to be seeing this, because they're looking right at your hands as you're doing this. And I think they're just letting me get away with this. They surely can't really be fooled by this. And then every time later when I'd produce their watch and they'd act shocked and surprised, I think, man, I could have done it. I could have actually done it in a performance setting. But I never got to that level of confidence. And who knows, maybe someday I'll get back into it enough to do that. But I was thinking about this the other day and thinking about how much suggestion and how much hypnosis is involved in that kind of performance magic that is all about, that's what makes it so effective, is getting someone fixated and focused on this very specific thing while other things happen just outside their field of vision. Or sometimes even within their field of vision that they should be able to see, but because they're so fixated on this thing, they don't notice these other things. And I think that's kind of one of those upper echelon levels of magical knowledge, of performance magic knowledge, is that use of really profound suggestion that kind of overrides critical thinking. And to this day, I still think back on doing that watch steal on friends and girls I wanted to flirt with or whatever, of stealing their wristwatches. And every time, because I would do it under the guise of doing a little sponge ball trick or something in their hands. So the whole time they're looking at their hands. It's not like I've got them looking up at the sky. They're looking at their hands as I am literally stealing their watch off their hand. And never once did anybody go, "Hey, you're taking my watch." Which blew my mind, because they're looking right at their hand. So you think that, 2-3 inches over, they would see that. And I think that was, again, from a magician's perspective, why I was never really able to incorporate that into my usual professional show, was just I didn't have the faith in the suggestion, and I didn't understand the mechanics of the hypnotic aspect of how focused they were, that the other things just didn't matter. And I think that's a really powerful thing. It's interesting when I read some of my books about hypnosis, and some of the guys like Darren Brown, who is a magician, really tries to dispel the idea that there's anything to hypnosis, that everybody's just playing along. And if you've ever experienced some of that stuff firsthand, of seeing how profound, really good suggestion can be in keeping someone's attention off something else, you realize there is very much a hypnotic state. And I think it's actually theta, I think, is the brain state. Anyway, every time I stumble across this, I have, because of this, when years later, when I could afford it, I went and found this book on the internet. And I have this and about, I think, 2 or 3 other pretty good theatrical pickpocketing books. And it's funny to me now, going back, knowing what I know about hypnosis, going back and revisiting this literature, that's never mentioned. I think they talk about misdirection and all that, but there's really an element of kind of hypnotic, I don't want to say control, but a hypnotic fixation that is being exerted there that makes that possible. And that's never really discussed, and that's really kind of the key element to making all of that work. And if you get a chance, there's a theatrical pickpocket, I think his name is Apollo something, that has some pretty good videos on the YouTube of him doing his pickpocket routine, that are definitely worth watching. But if you pull any of that up and watch it, some of it you will have to watch multiple times to see anything actually happening, because it is so if it's done right, if the guy doing it right is good, your focus will be exactly where he wants your focus to be, which again goes all the way back to the hypnotic element of it. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I was going through my books the other day, organizing some of these, and saw this. And then I have a whole separate book just on watch steals, because that is such a fascinating thing to me. And again, it's one of those things that's kind of like cold reading. It's about as close to real magic as you're going to get, because you really did take their watch right out from under their nose. And so it really is kind of a weird, kind of a superpower once you master that technique. But anyway, that is Jim Revell's Theatrical Pickpocketing. Thought that'd be a nice break from some of the more heavy, serious stuff.